Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of Politics Relax podcast. I'm back. I haven't been hosting for a while, but I'm here. And just before we start, if you haven't already, make sure to check out our new website, or relatively new, which will be in the description of this video. It's got articles and things, and also if you're interested in writing an article, either DM us or email us. So anyway, today we've got Felix, Lily, Piers and Cameron, and we're going to be talking about probably the main thing happening in the world right now in politics, which is the US election, or at least when we're recording this. And then just as a smaller point, the UK national lockdown. So first of all, the UK lockdown, we'll start with that because it's a bit smaller. Felix, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying I don't think it's the right move. 2 weeks ago, or it might have been 3 now, I called for a 2-week firebreaker lockdown during half term. It was the same thing, a Labour proposal that I definitely supported. This lockdown is going to be too long, it's going to be too late, and it doesn't encompass schools. If we'd have had the firebreaker lockdown 2 weeks ago, then we would have had the schools in a natural break, so they could have locked down. Maybe you would have had 1 week off school, but it's not really that much in the grand scheme of things. Therefore, you got the schools off, so it's going to shut a lot more of the COVID-19 cases down. I think a lot of people are going to also say that it's the lockdown we're having now is we shouldn't have been having it at all. Well, that's not true, because according to a study by Oxford University, lockdown, if we didn't have a lockdown, we could have at least about double the amount of deaths that we're currently having. That's the one that Boris Johnson used in his briefing. In case they're rapidly rising, the government needs to take action. And frankly, the local lockdowns have not been working, but that's why we're turning to this. If they had been working, the government would not have brought in a national lockdown.
So, Cameron, do you want to respond to Felix there?
Well, having seen the same data, the Oxford study and everything, I do have to kind of agree with Felix here, and I fundamentally think that we've rushed into this lockdown once again. And it's not that I oppose lockdowns, I don't, but I feel as though we've rushed into it without taking a step back and looking at all of the options, and perhaps we might have made the wrong choice here. And in addition, I would say, what is the point in a lockdown if you're going to keep the schools open? Because we know that the schools, there is as much virus transmission in schools as in businesses, hospitality sector and everything. We know that that's an equal amount. So we're only going to be cutting infections by half here. We're not going to be reducing it by a massive majority. And the other thing I would say is that in a lockdown, we're going to see businesses go bankrupt. We're going to see mental health worsen, suicide levels increase. We're going to see the economy completely ruined, and we're going to see the Treasury pretty much bankrupted. So we're really going to struggle coming out of this, and it's us young people that are going to have to pay for these debts in the future. So what I would say, I mean, I now agree with Felix. It would have been better to have a circuit breaker lockdown during half term than have this 4-week lockdown now. If it were my choice, though, I think that we should have taken a step back, looked at all the options before once again rushing straight into a lockdown that's going to cause harm to so many people. I know no one wants to say it, so therefore we're always going to end up in a lockdown, and that's where I come back to Felix's point, where it would have been better to have gone into a lockdown a couple of weeks ago.
Piers, what do you think about this?
Well, I like my individual freedoms as much as the next person, but lockdown seems to be a good idea in this case, better late than never, although I do agree with the Labour Party that we should have done it at the beginning of half term just to minimise cases. It's good that they're extending furlough until March. Well, it's a good short-term solution. We'll see how that comes out in the long run. Like what Cameron said, the economic downturn, that'll be passed down to us. But for everyone else, it's an okay enough solution for now.
Yeah, Felix, do you want to talk again?
Yeah, I'm glad that everybody backed me up. As Cameron said, it's going to be a terrible for the economy, absolutely devastating, especially with the billions that have been pumped in over the last few months. This government have had 6 months to prepare for a second wave. We knew it was coming. Most people knew around the time it was coming, and the government have had 6 months to prepare for this. It's absolutely shocking, the fact that they've had 6 months to prepare for it, and the fact that they have done nothing towards it, and we pump billions of pounds down the drain for a few months of economic movement, and now it's going to shut down again 4 weeks at the least. And it's going to be like this until we get a vaccine, probably. So the government have got to get better at making the right decisions before it's too late. They haven't learnt from their mistakes, because last time we had a lockdown, we went too late. And I said we went too late. Everyone said, oh, it's in hindsight. But now it's not in hindsight, because I called this lockdown 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I said we should have a circuit breaker lockdown. So it's not Captain Hindsight. It's the government wrong again.
Cameron, what do you think then?
We've also got our tracing system up and running. I know it's not the best, but at least it exists, and we can use this opportunity hopefully to improve it. But I would say that test, trace and isolate is being touted almost as like the core of our response, but it's not. Nothing is the core of our response. This is the difficulty with dealing with this virus. We're going to be coming in and out of lockdown. People are going to be moaning about this, that and the other, but we're going to be in this limbo for months until we get a vaccine. So we need to we really need to make sure that we're, as I said before, taking a step back and making sure we're doing everything right, and that we are not damaging our businesses, our economy, and people's mental health too much. Because at the end of the day, coming out of this lockdown, we will have damaged the businesses, our economy, people's mental health. But the one thing that won't have changed, the virus will still be around. And so we're going to keep on coming in and out of lockdowns unless we, we really try and clamp down on it. I think, as I said before, I think the government
Felix,
have
respond to Cameron there.
I think you sort of misunderstood my point. I wasn't exactly attacking what the government have done over the last 6 months. I was just saying they had 6 months to prepare for this second wave, which is now upon us, and I don't think they've done too well at learning from their mistakes. But on the test and trace system, they hired Dido Harding, they pumped billions of pounds into it, and it's not come off as they expected. The app has had a lot of problems with it. Baroness Dido Harding is in charge of test and trace. It's not necessarily the capacity for our test and trace, it's the way it's being run. There have been hundreds of stories from the workers in test and trace about how little calls they're doing and how much they're getting paid. They're getting paid quite a lot of money to do not very much. And people keep calling it the NHS test and trace. This is not an NHS test and trace. This is a Serco test and trace. It's a private company that are running this, and they're running it terribly. But I don't really want to get on to an argument about test and trace now, because it's not really what this is about. But I just wanted to respond to that.
Right, so moving on now to the bigger topic, the US election at the moment. And obviously, been going on for quite a while now. Hopefully we'll have a result between in the next few days, probably, hopefully. As we're recording this, it's the 6th, so we don't have a result yet, obviously. But does anyone want to start us off? They have a general point that they want to make just before we start. Piers.
Hello. I think. I mean, last week Last week I said that I was neutral. I'm neutral on this election. Pretty much, and that's okay despite what people tell you. And I'm just happy that the polls were wrong, because that's what I thought would happen, and the polls were wrong. It seems like Biden's going to win it. He's got Pennsylvania, and he's got Georgia. I mean, if Trump gets a good amount of votes there, he can flip them, but that's unlikely now because they're just doing the mail-in votes. And well, yeah, it seems like a pretty clean Biden win, although it's very close. It's one of the closest elections we've had in a long time. Well, yeah, a long time.
Yeah, so just on like Pennsylvania there, Georgia, some of these states are very close. So about Biden has done quite well at swinging states in general, and he's now leading at the moment quite comfortably. Well, not quite comfortably, it is a slim lead, but he does have a lot of the battleground states. So Felix, do you want to go?
Yes, I would. Arizona, we've seen has been flipped, and I think the Biden campaign have done a great job in there. We've also seen Wisconsin and Michigan's flip, but they are blue wall states, so it's not as impressive, but are still very important states for Joe Biden. And it looks like he's going to get Georgia, but they are going to recount. It's going to be very, very, very tight. Very tight margins there. But in Georgia, I actually like to say that it wasn't just Biden's campaign that it wasn't just Biden that we should be thanking. There's actually a great woman called Stacey Adams who's been working there over the last 2 years. She lost her primary, but then she focused on like trying to make it a battleground state, because normally Georgia will be a very red state and you wouldn't expect it to be like as tight as it is. She went around campaigning. 200,000 people she got to sign up to vote for this election. So I'd just like to say thanks to her, and as well to the poll workers who've been working out for day and night, and the Trump campaign have attacked them. But we'll get onto that later, I think.
So, yeah, does anyone else have anything they want to say about these battleground states? Yeah, Cameron, go on.
Well, this has been an election like no other, I think it's safe to say. And for me personally, any respect that I had for Trump at the start of the week has been completely lost, because the way that he has handled this election this week, it's been honestly disgraceful. No evidence of voter fraud. If he brought evidence, I would understand, but there is no evidence, and therefore he's handled this completely wrongly. I think he's been planning it for months. You can see it with encouraging people to not mail in and things like that. But yeah, on the specifically the swing states, it's been very interesting to see how they've progressed over the days, because this time yesterday I was certain, to be honest, that Trump was probably going to get Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and it was all going to hinge on Nevada. I was really certain on that. But the way it's progressed today, it's been very interesting. It's going to be those mail-in votes. Yeah, it's opened up a lot. So it's now not hinging on Nevada, which is good, because they seem to be taking ages just to count some votes. So we're going to see, I think, at the end of it, a relatively safe but close Biden win. And it's going to be far closer than what the polls were predicting. But it's going to be a very interesting couple of days in those swing states. And elections are going to change forever with these mail-in votes. Like they were this time, because it's just pretty outstanding.
Yeah, Piers, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Cameron said right there. I think with the mail-in votes, we can all agree that they're a nuisance, and it would be preferable if they weren't there. And well, if COVID wasn't a thing, you shouldn't really be mail-in voting, because they have a higher potential for fraud. But there's still very little fraud that can actually go on there. Well, either there's very little or there's loads, if America is just one big corrupt mess, but it isn't really. So yeah, Biden win, good for him. Not much will change.
Trump doesn't seem to be too happy about the mail-in.
Oh yeah, he'll go to the Supreme Court, and he put the woman in as well. But I don't know. I don't know if they can really stand up for him really there.
Yeah, Felix, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Piers just mentioned the fraud level. It's actually 0.0006% of fraud ballots in America. I quoted that last week as well. But here we go. We're in this very unique situation with this election. It's not how anybody expected, and coronavirus has played a huge part in that, because, as everyone said, they've actually summed it up really nicely, I think, because I have to agree with Piers as well on the mail-in ballot situation. If in an ideal world you wouldn't have mail-in ballots, and then we could see a fair, square election, and there'll be no. I say fair, square election. Sorry, I want to just
clarify.
Clarify that. It's not unfair. That's not what I was trying to say there. But we could have an election where Trump didn't claim it wasn't unfair, because it has been Trump lies throughout the campaign. He started on Twitter, on Facebook. Piers mentioned it, but coronavirus has played a huge part in that, and the mail-in ballots as well. And if it wasn't for coronavirus, we wouldn't even probably be talking about the mail-in ballots. And I suspect Trump would still be making a scene, but it would not be the same. And I definitely agree with Cameron. He's been planning this for months. It's just one big setup. You can see right from the very start, telling his supporters not to vote by mail, and then how can he expect that most of the mail-in votes going to go to Joe Biden after he said they're fraudulent and you shouldn't use them? His logic doesn't make sense. He's got no evidence to back it up. He's lying.
Lily, do you want to make your point here?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about what you can see in America right now is almost like arguably the most division America's seen in its history right now. You can see in the country. If you look at Arizona, that was flipped from Republican to Democratic. You can see that there is like people on the streets shouting, fighting. There's civil unrest and stuff, and that's like a very unstable government for Biden to come into if he does win. So I'm interested to see how he copes with that and how he handles what's going on now. And it will really reflect on him and his presidency to see what he does in these next few months.
Piers, would you like to respond to
that? Well, I don't know. I think a lot of the whole American Civil War II, America's dying, is a lot of overextension. I will say it's quite tense there. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that. Trump, the Democrats and the Republicans are all responsible there. But it's not the most divisive time in its history. It doesn't have a major superpower to contend with yet. China's still emerging. It hasn't got a seceded state who likes slaves to itself, and it's not intervening in. Well, it is intervening in wars, but to not such an extent as it was in the Cold War that promotes mass riots because of it, and it's a lot more stable than social media will have you think.
Felix, do you want to speak about this?
Yeah, I would. I think you mentioned how everyone, but just a few hours ago, we heard reports that people were turning up to counting stations with guns. If a black person did that, the police would be there. They'd probably have shot them by now. But since it's white, far-right Republican demonstrators, they're not being shot. Actually, one of them did get thwarted in a plan to have a terrorist attack on one of the buildings. Not necessarily Republican. Well, they were chanting "Stop the votes," and it's a Republican. It was tweeted earlier by Donald Trump. I just think that it's unfair to say it was the Democrats. The Democrats aren't turning up to polling stations with guns shouting "Stop the count." They may be turning up to counter-demonstrate, to say keep counting the votes, which is constitutional and is right. Unlike people turning up to polling stations with guns, there are Americans doing their jobs. They are volunteers counting the votes, doing a great service to the American people, doing it, some of them for free, and they're being threatened with guns. They've had to have security around counting stations. That is not right. Something has gone seriously wrong here when the president is inciting violence like that.
Cameron, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the point I would make here, the obvious point to make, is about the Black Lives Matter riots that America has suffered from recently. That would be very much the counter argument against what Felix has said. So I think, yeah, there has been actually that both sides of a lot of arguments in America need to take responsibility because they have left America in a very much worse state than it was a decade ago, for example. So, yeah, I mean, and Trump is very much responsible for that as well. And I agree with Felix on that. Trump has been the most divisive president probably in America's history. But I would say that also there has been violence on the side of, for example, the Black Lives Matter protests, and therefore, you know, we're talking about a much more divided society.
Yeah, Felix, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I would. It's a very short point. I just wanted to say you called Black Lives Matter riots. Well, 98% of this is a statistic. 98% of the people who turned out to Black Lives Matter were peaceful and didn't riot. So it's a very small minority. And like Piers said before, the news and Twitter and other social media are always going to inflame these sorts of issues on both sides of the argument here. I'm not saying that it's just Black Lives Matter that's been inflamed. I suspect a lot of the Republican stuff has as well. But I just think it's unfair to characterize every single one at the Black Lives Matter protests as rioters. I don't think that's fair.
I'm going to move on to my last point here, which is about Trump himself, and especially with his speech last night. It was cut from lots of broadcasts because of the blatant lies in it and the false information. So Felix, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, yesterday was, I'd say, a big turning point in the election and the election coverage. I felt that it just really added some more tension, and I think that's why a lot of these hate protests outside of the the counting stations have been blamed on Trump. I'll talk more about the things he said yesterday. It's disgusting. It was an attack on American democracy inside the White House. It's really amazing that no other president would do this apart from Donald Trump, because it's not surprising. Let's be honest, we've been seeing this for months. He was never going to accept defeat. He's a sore loser. We saw that when he called the Emmys rigged. He also, in 2016, said they lost a few million votes because Clinton, won the popular vote. And he said that was rigged and not true. So it's not like it's surprising, but it's an attack on democracy. There's no evidence to back it up, like Cameron said before. And if there was evidence, maybe we would be looking at a different picture, but we're not. It just smears on people doing a great job and a great service by counting the votes. There is nothing to back up his vote by mail, and maybe on the polls they were a bit wrong, but I think they are trying their best to get it right. I don't think they would purposefully get the polls wrong. He called that voter suppression. I do not think that the polls are voter suppression. He's just a sore loser. And I really do not understand it, but I can see why Trump would do it. I mean,
yeah, thanks, Lily. Thanks for that. He also said that the FBI was rigged. Just to add to that. So Piers, would you like to talk on this topic of Trump?
Well, I mean, I just think that Trump needs to grow up a bit. I mean, he's like a 72-year-old man. Well, America in general needs to grow up a bit. It needs to realize that how much of a fortunate position it is in the world, and it needs to Europeanize, if that makes sense. Because a lot of European countries have conservative governments, but they're not getting the same hate as they do, because they have things like universal healthcare and good workers' hours. I mean, that's why my mum moved from the US to here. It's fine to be a Republican, but and a conservative, but you have to take into account that capitalism isn't perfect, and you got to take into account the human rights as well.
Yeah. Felix, would you like to?
Yeah. I would. I'd just like to add a quote in from a Republican senator, and he was also a presidential nominee from the Republican Party, and I think he summarized it very nicely. He says that President Trump's rhetoric about stolen elections damages the cause of freedom here and around the world. Here it would be America, and he also very rightly called out the racism from the press conference when he attacked two black cities, two majority black city, calling them corrupt with no evidence to back that up. It was a bit of casual racism, but what are you going to expect from President Trump? I mean, we've seen this the whole time. I just want to reinforce that this is not a surprise to anyone, I don't think.
So, Lee, would you like to talk?
This is sort of like a separate point, but I just wanted to raise the issue that I personally, in my opinion, I don't think it should be this close. Like, obviously it is. Like, I'm not saying that, like, this point can be interpreted in two ways. What I'm saying is I don't think it should be this close, as in not this many people should be voting for Trump. Like, not many people should be voting and supporting the things that he believes in. From like knowing all the things that he's done in these 4 years. In these 4 years, the only thing you can say he's substantially achieved is the improvement to the economy. And I know a lot of stuff has happened that is out of the ordinary that other presidents did not have to go through. But he has literally done nothing for the people of America. That if you're not a cis, straight, white person, then he's literally done nothing for you. And in my opinion, I don't think it should be this close when you're arguing over issues that are literally human rights. So
Felix, would you like to respond to Lily's point?
I wouldn't disagree with the point. I just like to say I don't know if now is the right time to be bringing up the fact that the Biden campaign hasn't really done as well as it should have. I mean, President Trump has killed 200,000 people. He's the only president in 90 years to have left the country with less jobs than it started with. But of course, that's COVID-19. Of course, there's COVID-19. I just want to say why I don't think it's the right time to bring it up. I think we've got to see this election through. We just have to wait till the end. Wait till we can confirm that President Biden, Vice President Biden, will be the next president, and then we can start to look at the campaign and all its wrongdoings, because it hasn't been the best. Sorry, he should have won by more, and I expected him to win by more. Especially after what Trump's done. So I agree with the point. I just don't know if it's the right time to bring it up.
Lily, just because it's a direct response, would you like to?
Yeah, what I wanted to say was I was in no way criticizing Biden's campaign at all. I'm just saying that in my personal opinion, I don't think that many Americans should be voting for someone that has ruined that many lives. That's just what I'm saying. I'm not criticizing Biden at all, because there are holes in his campaign. But I'm not criticizing him at all. I'm just saying that
So
there's just been posts floating around on social media like it shouldn't be this close after all these things have happened. And it's definitely true, because it upsets me that many people voted for Trump. And I know he's a very popular person, but it just upsets me that many people, and it's this close now.
Yeah, so Piers, would you like to have the last point of the day today?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll give Trump credit. Well, it's not really Trump, it's more like Pompeo, but he's done some good stuff with bringing troops out of the Middle East. However stable those governments will be with a lack of American troops is debatable, but hopefully they can figure something out.
All right. I just want to kind of add, and maybe just to finish, reiterating what I've been saying the whole time. Biden is probably going to win at this point. He's not my first choice, but he has said the right things. He said, I'm going to govern all of America, and that's what he's going to need to do. He's inheriting a country that's ruined, it's in divides. And you got to remember that he's going to also inherit a country where 50% of the population do not support him and support the polar opposite of what he believes in. They support Donald Trump. And it's really shocking. I think Lily put it really nicely there, that that many people voted for Trump. But it shows where America is at, and there's still a lot of change to come. And I think it's going to be a very interesting 4 years and maybe beyond that.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for coming out to talk to us today. Thank you to anyone listening. Make sure you check out the website again in the description. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you and goodbye.